Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. This is The Amateur, where we're here just to talk life, hobbies, politics, ideologies, what have you. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking transgenderism, especially as it pertains to the military and the army. I think under President Trump, he had closed off transgender being allowed to serve in the army, and then under President Biden, that was recently opened back up. And there's an article that I'm going to read, and I know these article videos tend to be pretty long. This one seems short. This one seems reasonable. But just my initial takes on this, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong for transgendered personnel to serve in the military. But I think our understanding of what the military is and what it was are two separate things. They're two separate things. The military of today is not the military of World War II, of men and women, fighting together, fighting where their strengths were, doing it, for some for honorable reasons. For others, it's more so because it's an easy paycheck. Debatable, I don't really know. For all the opportunities, or because you have two moms and you have something to prove to the world.
With a little girl raised by two moms. Recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way.
I said what I said. But essentially it's like, I think there's importance to understanding discrimination in and of itself is not a bad thing. I don't know where to look. I don't know if you see that. I don't know if I need to look at myself or look at the camera. I try to mix both. I don't know if you've noted that throughout my videos. But anyway, that's what I meant. Discrimination is not necessarily a bad thing. Discrimination can be good. It can be the point. It can be the intention. It could be the whole point. The whole point of women's spaces, if we're just going to bring in that typical talking point, is to discriminate between men and women. We don't want men in women's spaces. We have to determine what man and woman is and be able to discriminate so that men aren't in women's spaces. That's the whole point of that discrimination there. And so within the military, there is a certain discrimination. There is right now, at least, it's an all volunteer force, and so they're able to do that. But there's a discrimination on physical fitness. You have to be able to meet certain physical requirements, and if you can't, you're not welcome. You're not welcome in the army, or in the military, or wherever it is that you're trying to serve. You have to meet height, weight standards. If you don't meet them, you're not welcome in the army or the military or wherever it is you want to serve. Police force, firefighters, I don't really know how it works there. Again, I'm a military background person. That's where all my family has served. And there's other medical discrepancies, behavioral health discrepancies. I don't think you're allowed to serve with bipolarism. You're not allowed to serve with schizophrenia. Did I pronounce that right? I feel like I did. And so, especially when you have something with gender dysmorphia and body dysmorphia being another high rate, previously there has been discrimination against those personnel, because I think on one hand there is actual genuine concern. Like the military already has a higher rate and a higher proportion of suicides than it does to the general population. It's understanding that that's the type of stress for some people and for some of the positions that are had. It's already more stressful, more austere, more just mentally draining in that position, in that military environment, than it is in the rest of the general population. So there's already some mental stress. And the previous video was talking about that holistic mental capacity, resiliency, whatever. And then on top of that, you have the transgender community. That's a whole big talking point, is that the transgendered folks are more likely to commit suicide than anyone else. And then you're going to put them in an environment that's already more likely to, cause suicide. So from just a logical outside looking in, it's not necessarily a discrimination against transgender themselves for not allowing service, but as a matter of safety. And so I think it's something where if someone has already pre-transitioned and is considered medically stable, like ground in their new truth or their new identity or whatever, and now they have this desire to serve, then they can be welcomed into the Army. But I think also the Army needs to have one standard of physical fitness, because it doesn't help when you're discriminating things based off sex in the physical fitness realm, but we're not supposed to discriminate on sex when it comes to transgender, but that like those two ideals don't mesh. And so I think that needs to be figured out for sure. And by figured out, I mean the Army needs to have a gender neutral physical fitness standard, so it doesn't matter if you're trans or not. I mean, it might matter for some things, but it shouldn't. And then, so the second thing, I forgot what I was going to say. I think that was the main thing, is just that, the risk of suicide, like the Army discriminates against those things. If you're mentally disabled, if you're mentally challenged, you're not supposed to be able to serve. I think some people get through. That's a conversation from my sister. No disrespect to anyone who's in the Army or in the military or who serves or anything, but that was funny. And I know there's that whole thing about, the Marines eat crayons and, like only idiots go to the Army or the military to join the Marines. I mean, to an extent, it's like, who puts themselves through that level of physical rigor for what, I'm kidding. I love my military service personnel. But anyway, so that's just my takes on that. I'm just going to go ahead and read this article and see what it says. I just want to see what it says. So it says, this is titled, "A Change to Policy Allows Transgender Soldiers to Serve Openly," and this was published June 24, 2021. Transgender personnel, individuals with gender dysphoria who can meet the Army standards for military service, can now serve openly in their self-identified gender, according to a new policy approved this month by the Army Secretary. Army Directive 2021 through 2022 changes the service's retention, separation, in-service transition, and medical care standards for transgender personnel, and refines entry criteria for individuals with gender dysphoria. I think along those lines, though, we kind of have to make gender dysphoria be a medical, mental. I don't know, I'm not super privy on this. I want to say that it was at some point removed from the DSM-5, which is the APA's Bible of, mental conditions, but I'm not sure if that is actually the case or not, so we'll have to see there. So it says, "People are the strength of our Army," Stitt said Tuesday. "Our ability to assess and retain qualified personnel provides a more diverse and stronger Army, enhancing readiness." This is so dumb. Army, I don't know. I don't know what is meant by diverse. I think, again, you have diversity of looks, which I don't know. I'll have to make another video on this. I don't want this one to be too long. Okay. A soldier's gender identity will no longer be a basis for involuntary separation or military discharge, denied re-enlistment or continuation of service, or subjected to adverse action or mistreatment, the policy states. And I think it's just saying, if someone was currently serving in the military and figured out or whatever, something happens and they're like, I no longer want to keep my hair cut short, I want to grow it out like the ladies do. I can't remember where I just watched it. It was I think again it was Matt Walsh. It was an Air Force officer who was transgendered. And I'm not laughing at the officer, but the way that I'm laughing because of Matt Walsh.
It's important, though, for us, I think, for everyone to understand kind of what motivates you, right? What keeps you, what inspires you, what keeps you motivated?
What really keeps me motivated is the people that are going to come after us. Some people have called me a trailblazer in some of the things that I do, and that's something I really embrace, because what that means is that it's not about me. It's about the fact that the road behind me is now paved, and the generation coming after us has an easier chance to make it to where I've made it, to make it where so many others have made it, but then they've got the time and the energy to go further. So if we can set the conditions where the folks after us get to do even greater things, I'm thrilled.
Trailblazer. Sure, I mean, he is probably the first male military officer in recent history to wear his hair that long, because that's all it takes, of course.
Anyway, I'll put the clip in there so you can see. But anyway, so pretty much what it's saying, though, is that if you were going through this process, it would have been a diagnosed medical condition unfit for the Army, and for that there is a medical process for these things to, if your medical condition is considered to be something, again, like unfit for the Army, that you're not able to maintain all the other standards or requirements that go along with being in the Army, then you're going to be medically processed out. I think it's an honorable discharge still. You still get some veterans benefits. I think that's what they call it. Okay. But it says the updated policy will apply to all active duty, National Guard, and Reserve soldiers, U.S. Military Academy cadets, and contracted Reserve Officer Training Corps cadets. Military, that's ROTC. Military medical providers will provide medically necessary care for transgender soldiers following guidelines by the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Health Affairs and the Army Surgeon General, Stitt said. So I think my previous knowledge, again, I'm kind of bringing up old things. Another issue I won't say issue, but a concern, I guess that is an issue. Another issue of transgendered personnel in the Army and the military was that, at least based off how this is being framed, is that they don't want taxpayer dollars having to pay for transitions. And to an extent, it from what I've just read there, it's just kind of what it seems like, is that it's almost kind of like if you are transgendered or in some way or shape or form, and if you join the Army and you declare as such, then the Army will pay for your transition. Not like sex reassignment or anything, but like all the hormones and all this other thing. I don't really know how expensive all that stuff is, but it's what it is. That was, again, I'm not saying that is currently a problem or if that's going to be like a big impact, but again, like I think I said, I don't know if it was this video or the last video, but like the Army, military, Department of Defense, like their money comes from taxpayer dollars. So like you gotta, again, that's a statement of budget and the lack of transparency on where all these funds are going to and like being appropriately spent. But I think as the American people, we have a right to know where the money is going to, what it's being spent on, and what we don't want it being spent on, like having that conversation. But we need to have a lot of conversations as a country. That's besides the point. But it continues in saying, every soldier is different, Stitt said. When a military medical provider gives diagnosis of gender dysphoria, that soldier will need to sit down with their chain of command and the medical provider to determine what is medically necessary for an effective transition. Along those lines, because I've heard, and I might be wrong here, this is a speculation on my part, but I have heard that as far as there is, for some people who claim transgenderism, or that they are trans, is that there's a hormone imbalance. And for some, the solution is giving the hormone balance in conjunction to their non-sex. But I wonder if supplementing the hormones that they're lacking, if that like would, instead of pushing more away from what they actually are, to try to correct it to what it should be, just a thought. I don't know if that's wholly the case with those who actually have that gender dysphoria and body dysphoria. Okay, so a commander should approach a soldier's gender transition in the same way they approach any soldier receiving any other necessary medical treatment. The policy reads, leaders must also do their part to minimize the impact on mission readiness, all while balancing the Army's needs with the desires of the transitioning individual. Once a soldier is stable in their self-identified gender, they can then request to change their gender marker in a Defense Enrollment Eligibility Reporting System, or DEERS. Once the change is complete, all policies and standards for that given gender will then apply, the policy reads. So this is, I think, something where if on their card, so I know I used to have like a dependent card when I was dependent on my dad. And so I think along those lines, it's like in that system, if you've changed your sex, it changes. But what I never understand with that is like, why do we do that? Like, why can't we just say like TM or TF to say trans female, trans male, and not just male and female? Because there's a difference. There's a difference. And so like, it's like, I don't think it's wrong for someone who is male, wants to present as trans female, or as trans, or who wants to be trans and wants to present as female, that instead of it just saying M, it says TF. Like, is that wrong? I don't get like why, like if they, I don't know, if they don't want to be associated with male but be associated with their trans, like you're not female, so we can't say that. I guess it's that whole thing about like denying reality and the truth. Whatever. But just say like TF, so like we know, like, oh, okay, we get it, you're trans. No big deal. That's what it is. Okay, but I think that's what they're saying there. But again, like along those lines, and that's what I was saying previously, is like if you're gonna have one standard, I mean, if you're gonna have gendered testings, then I don't know if they're saying now that the trans personnel are going to be falling under the lines of their new person. But I think again, it's a disadvantage of females transitioning to male. When I say females transitioning, like females wanting to present as male, and them having now that more difficult standard, which is why I just think, one gender neutral standard. It doesn't matter. Just meet the minimum. That's all that's at. Just meet the minimum. Is that too hard? Shouldn't be. It says individuals will be expected to meet all uniform grooming, body composition, physical readiness, and drug testing standards. Similarly, a soldier's identified gender and DEERS will permit them to access gender-specific facilities such as bathrooms and showers. And that's okay. All right. Transgender personnel and individuals with gender dysphoria must meet all applicable medical accession standards to gain entry into the Army. The policy reads, before the updated Army guidelines, individuals with gender dysphoria were presumptively disqualified unless stable for 36 months and willing and able to serve in their biological sex instead. And, I don't see why that was a problem. I think that's kind of what I was saying earlier. I don't know. So, like, if you, like, right? Is that an issue? Is that an issue? Should that... I don't know. I feel like that would have been fine. It's like I was saying, just you transitioned before the Army, so you've dealt with all the social pressure, you dealt with all the bullying, the name calling, whatever. Like, people do that. I get it. But you're stable, you're firm in what you want, and now you still have this desire to serve the Army, and you're willing to go through the Army's rigor and whatever to serve. And you're agreeing, like, you understand that your sex and your gender are not the same thing, because they're not, or, I don't know, I think they're the same. I think there's only two sexes, two genders, but that's a whole, I have already made my rant on that. But stable beforehand, you go in and you're still performing under the level that was expected of you, of your sex, because your sex isn't changing. Sex is never going to change. But I guess that's not, I don't know why they changed it. So under the new guidance, this duration to meet standards is now 18 months of stability, and the person can serve in their self-identified gender. This gives the Army a bigger applicant pool to consider. How much bigger? Okay? Like, how much bigger? Honestly. Because, I mean, the transgender community in and of itself is already small. The number that actually want to serve in the Army or in the military in any sort of capacity has got to be significantly smaller. Like, it already, like, I think it's like 1%, 2% of the total U.S. population serve in the Army. I have to look up that statistic and see if I'm right or not. We'll see. But I know it's like a very small percentage, like, that are actively serving in the Army right now. It's like 1%, maybe 2% of the total U.S. Army population. Factoring in the fact, so granted, everyone else that's out there in the world, in the U.S. that exist, only 1% will choose to join the Army. Of that, you have the transgender personnel, who are, again, an even smaller part of that pool to select from. And now you're selecting for people who want to actually serve. Like, that's got to be an extremely small number. So this gives the Army a bigger applicant pool to consider. Yes, it does, but also by like maybe 0.0000001%. It can't be that much. It can't be that much. I'm not crazy. Anyway, so applicants must present documents to validate their self-identified gender, such as a birth certificate, U.S. passport, or a certified copy of a court order reflecting one's self-identified gender. The policy states, if an individual cannot meet a medical criterion, they can request a waiver for evaluation of DoD Army policies. The standard for approval will be determined individually and must be in the Army's best interest after a thorough review of the individual's potential. I think along those lines, it's like with color blindness, I think you need a waiver for that. I'll have to look that up. But I know with color blindness, you're not able to serve in a lot of positions. I know, like, obviously with like aviation or being able to see all your colors, like that's a medical, like color blindness is a medical disability. You think you need a waiver in that, because you got to be able to see the colors. But I think you can get a waiver for that. So like similarly with gender dysphoria, but again, like I don't know if so the only thing that I'm seeing here is this offered, is this same sort of leniency offered for other mental disorders that are debilitating. I think I'm saying that word right. I always try to use big words that I don't fully know what they mean. It's like I kind of know what they mean because I've heard them before, but not fully. But anyway, like, I'm just wondering if this is, if this sort of, this waiver, if this request for a waiver is offered for personnel like with bipolar or schizophrenia or some sort of, again, like a mental disorder, but the Army thinks that they're good enough to serve in the Army. And I say good enough, that sounds kind of, it's a poorly phrased set of words to use. I just don't know how else to say that. But just thinking. Just thinking. Okay. So equal opportunity. The Army must continue to operate in an environment free from harassment and unlawful discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, it said. Training on the new policy will be necessary to ensure proper integration throughout the force. Over the next year, the service will launch a 3-tiered training model, starting with the Judge, Advocate General, Medical, and Chaplain Corps, and Inspector General personnel added. The second tier will follow shortly after and provide education to leaders and supervisors following the unit-level training during the third tier. All training on the updated policy must be completed no later than June 25th, 2022. Oh, that's this year. Stet said the Army will then have until September 2022 to adjust existing instruction books to train personnel on gender dysphoria and any changes to DoD and Army transgender policies. Department of Defense policy allows transgender personnel to serve openly, it said. Now we have the Army policy to support it. So again, my whole take on this is like, you can't have both equal outcome and a standard-based system. And I don't know. I think with this, it's definitely treating transgendered personnel or gender dysphoria as a almost elite form of mental disorder. It sounds really weird how I'm phrasing that, and I'm not sure how to make that sound any better. But it definitely, I don't know. Again, like, I'm not against transgendered personnel, those with gender body dysmorphia serving, if that's something that they understand. But I do think that there still needs to be one physical standard across the board, because that would mitigate a lot of the issues. And then I don't think that we need to accept, I think males need to be males, females need to be females. If you want to have them show that you are a trans female, which isn't a real thing, but if you want them to show that you're not, that you don't want to be male, I don't even think that should be allowed, honestly. I'm being a little bit lenient here with the policies, but it's just like, your sex is your sex. If you're going to make the argument that your sex and gender are two different things, then we're only concerned about your sex, and whatever your sex is the sex that you are, and the sex that you can't change, and all these other things. And I don't know, I think it's just definitely very, very complicated, and I don't know if this I don't know a lot of things. Because I'm just an amateur, and that's how I'm going to end that. So just let me know what you think in the comments and what are your thoughts on this. Again, I am trying to be very, very much respectful, as best as I can. But just, again, let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.